In the previous video, we have discussed the trailer frame and also the axle and tires. I used black color to mark it up, so it represents we have already discussed them. As you can see from here, the orange color in this file is connecting the axle and tire to the frame. In the semi-trailer, we call it suspension. There are many different types of suspension, but the major point you can see from upon picture is to connect the trailer frame to the axle and the tire. So you can have the whole trailer body itself. We have many different types of the suspension, and we have I have categorized them as 4. Of course, that's my category, but just for your information. First, we used a lot leaf spring suspension. It's normal suspension hanger with leaf spring and the equalizer to make sure it absorbs the sharpness from the driving. And next we have the airbag suspension. It's another higher class, higher level suspension. It is usually used in the highway or the good road condition. The third one, I categorize it as hydraulic suspension. We are going to see it soon. It is usually used for the military base, such as you are carrying the tanks or something you want is to be protected well. So the hydraulic cylinder is going to absorb all the thickness from the rough road condition. And then we are going to see some other suspensions which is also useful in the trailer system. We can have a look. First, let's have a look about this picture. This picture is showing you the leaf spring here, and axle here, and then we have the suspension hanger here, and then the equalizer, then the next leaf spring. So the whole system, we call it suspension. Those suspensions is connecting by those frames to the trailer frame and connecting the axle and tire. From this picture, you can see the back view of this suspension system. This is the axle. We had a video to discuss about it. This is the tire, and we had a video to discuss it too. Here is the suspension, and the leaf springs, all this to connecting with the trailer frame on the top. Here you can have another picture in a different angle to show you more clear view. This is another car, so just have to ignore it. Those hoses are the braking system. You don't have to mind it in this video at all. So just pay attention on those leaf springs and the suspension hangers, equalizers, and those welding seam are welding those suspension with the frame together. Those bolts are fastening the leaf spring to the axle. Here is another picture you can see. You can see the tire is blocking all the other suspension, and you can see the suspension hanger and the equalizer in the middle. So most of the time, it looks like you cannot see it, but actually you would see it if you remove the tire and the suspension hanger. Here, I remove the tire from the suspension system. You can only see the axle here. And then after the axle, you would see the leaf spring and the suspension hanger, the equalizer, and suspension rod, something like this. This is the end of the suspension. So it is in the front. So that's why it does not have an equalizer. If the suspension hanger is in the middle, so it needs to contact the two leaf spring together like this picture. So everywhere it has the equalizer. So the equalizer could move up and down, then it would observe the sharpness on the ground through the tire to the axle to the leaf spring and then to the equalizer, then to the pin, and then to the suspension hanger itself. Then after that, it's up to the frame. That's how we are protecting the frame. Of course, we need to do some reinforcement like this. Those reinforcement is making the frame and the suspension hanger and the axle and the suspension hanger in the other side and also the suspension rod into a box. This box is making sure the structure of the trailer is not breaking apart during the driving. Here is another picture you can see from the back view. You can see the braking chamber here. The braking chamber is a part of the braking system, but it's not a part of the suspension system. The suspension system included this pipe is the suspension hanger supporting pipe, and this is the suspension hanger in the rear, and the leaf spring, the U-bolt to fastening the leaf spring with the axle together, and here is equalizer. We see it many times. I prepared a lot of pictures to show you what it really looks like for the suspension of the leaf spring. So I hope those pictures will be showing more details, such as you need to greasing those joint part to make sure it is protecting the part from the wearness and the consummation. Here is the suspension rod. It's connecting the suspension hanger to the base of the axle, so it would also make those suspension hanger and equalizer and the leaf spring and the U-bolt and the axle and the suspension rod into a box structure. It would make a lot of triangle structure, box structure to have a good quality chassis for your trailer to operate. This picture shows you the reinforcement on the frame to exactly according to the suspension hanger. The two reinforcement plate is drawing apart with the suspension hanger from the bottom to the top, so it is not easily being broken. You can see it's almost every suspension hanger itself on the top is having those reinforcement plate like this one. It is giving a fixed structure to your trailer. This picture you can see it more clear. You can see all the suspension hanger is having a reinforcement plate on the top of the frame from the bottom of the flange to the top of the flange. So it would have a good quality for the trailer. This picture is to assembling the trailer to the frame. You can see the difference of the frame. This is a low bed frame, and this is a picture to show you the leaf spring is not quite Euro. It's upside down if you compare like this one. So This is especially for the lower bed. This is a picture you can see. It's before we are assembling it to the trailer. Here is a picture you can see the different suspension hanger and the equalizer. We call it a Germany style because it's different than the American style. Here is a picture. Our client is assembling the suspension in their yard to do that. Here I prepared a drawing to show you how it looks like, how the suspension and the leaf springs looks like in those systems. It would give you clear idea how it looks from the side and how it looks from the top and how it looks in the other side. After that, we would to show you how we are going to testing the suspension. We don't test all the trailers, but we test in the different patches of the trailer to see if there's any major mistake. First, we placed our trailer in a yard to do the testing. Then we measure the length from the kingpin to the double side of the axle. And then we measure the distance between the two axles. And then we measure the height between the bottom flange and the leaf spring. And then we measure the height from the bottom of the suspension and to the ground, both sides, left and right. Then we would put a payload onto the trailer, land it on the top to simulate the trailer is working. So after that, then we measure it again to measure the distance changing and mark it up on those documents. Then we should check after we go back to the office to make sure the trailer is having the right calculation. If the trailer has a wrong design such like this, it would make the distance between the two tires are very little. So when you are go to a ramp, then the two tires gonna jam together. That would be the disaster. So it must be prevented before we ship any of our trailer to our client. This picture is showing you the tire has been consuming very fast because they are touching each other when they are going to the top. And this is the trailer they didn't do the right calculation. Here is a picture to show you how we are doing the jobs before we do the assembling. First, we welded the top plate and the bottom plate on the axle, and then we tack weld it, and then it would be looks like this. So you would have a base to fasten the U-bolt and to land the leaf spring on the top. Then we would mount the leaf spring on the top and then use the U-bolt to fasten it. After we fasten it, we use the torque arm spanner to check the torque is correct to make sure all the bolt has been fastened well. And then we do it again and again and again. And then we check the position by the jag we have already made and check the straight line of the leaf spring and all the other dimensions we need to double check, something like this. Then we would have the axle with the leaf spring is ready to assemble together. Then after all that, then we have the part is qualified to do the assembly. So that's everything about the leaf spring suspension. The next suspension we are going to see is airbag suspension. The airbag suspension is higher level, as we have talked. It looks like this. There's no leaf spring, just a shock absorber, and airbags is the most sign you can see. You can recognize it. It is usually looks like this way. You would have the airbag and axle and the suspension hanger, the spring, of course, and also the base and the shocking absorber, something like this. This is an airbag. You can have an airbag to do the function same like the leaf spring. The airbag is also could it could also observe all the thickness from the ground. Here you can see from another angle of the view. There is another function, there is another feature that airbag suspension could do, but the leaf spring suspension could not do, is lifting. You can lift the tire up when you are not carrying any cargo. It would save your tire consumption, and also it would save a lot of the fuel. It saving your operation cost anyway. So you can see there is a huge gap between the tire and the ground. This is another view. You can see the airbag. Here you can see the airbag, and before we do any assembling, we do the leaf spring suspension for the two axle in the rear and the one front axle with the air suspension. Here is another picture to show you what it is really looks like in the different design of the air suspension in different angles. You can see the rocket beam here. The air suspension have a different design. Some of the air suspension supplier is using the rocket beam. Some of the supplier is using the spring. This is the rocket beam, and this is a spring. You can see the spring is two pieces. It's at the bottom of the axle to do the supporting instead of the rocket beam. This is how it looks like when you are putting a lot of air in the airbag. It would lift your frame a lot. This is a normal position before you put a lot of airs. But for those air suspensions, if your country has a rough road condition, we strongly recommend you consider the leaf spring suspension, because your driver is going to face a nightmare to have no spare parts to purchase, and they cannot fix it by the welding. So they have to figure out a different way, and some of them, even you re-weld it, it still break it after a while. And also you need to aware to have the airbags like this. If you have the airbags like this, you would have the huge problem. It would fall off. And also, you always keep your airbags with air. If you release the airbag's going to be easily damaged by the weight of the trailer body itself. After all that, you need to also have the insurance, like the cable of the steel cable, to fasten it on the frame to prevent if there is any damage on the airbag or the shock absorber. You have the insurance to carry the axle. There's nothing having the axle off your trailer. That would be the last thing you want to say. Here's another angle. You can see the safe cable you need to install on your trailer. This picture is showing you how the air suspension trailer is coming to our yard as a spare parts. As you can see, it is different than the other axles. It is definitely have a higher cost. So the air suspension has a higher cost than the normal axle. So that would be all for the air suspension, I think. This is a picture to show you the hydraulic suspension. A hydraulic suspension. So a hydraulic suspension is usually used in the military base. If you have a tank to carry, you want to have a suspension like this. You want to have the high speed, but also you want to have the reliable shock absorber. Then you can have the hydraulic suspension. But of course, the cost is about twice, maybe 5 times than the normal suspension. Okay, after all those 3 different types of suspension, we come to the other suspensions. Here, I'm going to show you the most common suspension they're using on the trailers is this. They call it a bogie suspension because it's having a huge point to assemble the 2 axles together before they mount it to the frame. So it is just a 1 point to the frame. That's why they call it a bogie suspension, like this one. And those details pictures I'm going to leave you here. And also the drawing to show you like here. You can pause the video and see the different part of those kind of like bogie suspension. And also another one is same like this design, but usually used for the low bed semi-trailer. We call it a rocket beam suspension like this one. You would have the 2 axles in one line together, like the drawing says, using the rocket beam suspension like this to have more payload, to make sure your low bed semi-trailer is stronger than the normal semi-trailer. That's why you need the rocket beam suspension. Okay, I think it's enough for today, and today is just a rough introduction for everyone to understand what is the suspension system. It is not detailed. We shall do the detailed video in the future if we have time. Thank you very much. Hope to see you next time.